God kväll och välkomna till Trolling with Logic den 25 januari 2014. Klockan är 8 här i Sverige, 7 GMT och 2 i östra USA. Vi är en liveshow på internet som behandlar ämnen som vetenskap, skepticism och filosofi. Jag är Mortimer och med mig som vanligt är Zulu och Kitsch. Och nu lämnar jag över till Zulu för allt det tekniska.
And thank you very much for the lovely intro, Marty. And just to go over the usual kind of tech stuff, just you can call in at any time. We take calls after about 30 minutes of the show. Just send a Skype contact request to Trolling with Logic. Send me a PM with a just general gist to your question, and we'll add you on in time. Also, the show is later uploaded to YouTube and iTunes. So if you call in, we are recording. So you grant us permission to use your likeness in the recording. And also, this show is public domain, and so feel free to share it, copy it, distribute it any way you like. We only ask that you link back to us as a courtesy. And just a very quick say hello to a kind of reduced panel. There's no Sheila this week, but welcoming back, Kitch. How are you doing?
Hey, everybody.
And Marty, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine.
All right, and we'll do a very quick introduction to our special guest. We were scheduled to have the Northern Ireland Humanists on, but they couldn't make it, so our guest kind of came in at the last minute here. He is the president of the Swedish Skeptics Association. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the Swedish name of it. And
Vetenskap och folkbildning.
There you go.
Hey!
And also he holds a PhD in archaeology, specializing in Scandinavian prehistory. So please welcome to the show, Martin. How do you pronounce your surname? Sorry.
That's Rundkvist in Swedish.
Rundkvist.
But you can say Rundkvist if you like.
Ah, right. So, like I say, welcome to the show.
Or you can say RuneQuest. That's even better.
So we'll just start off the usual kind of introductory questions. So, like, how did you get interested in skepticism? What really?
I was bullied by postmodernists at my department when I was a PhD student. They were very arts wings, humanities people, and I was thrilled to find that there are people who actually like science and who will say that, well, that issue is there's no use speculating about that because there's no data, which is awesome if you're from a humanities background.
All right. So how did you get involved in the association itself? And how did you progress up to being the chairman?
A friend of mine sort of mentioned them, and I started, I joined and I got the quarterly journal, and after a few years I started editing the quarterly journal, and another few years I got elected onto the board, and for the past 3 years I've been the chairperson. Right. So it's a lively association.
All right. What's kind of the day-to-day workings of the association?
Well, what we mainly do is organize lecture nights and Skeptics in the Pub, and we put out, as I said, the quarterly journal. But I guess what is the most visible day-to-day thing we do is that we write debate pieces for the papers, and we give out annual awards, which always entertains journalists, because we have an anti-award where we tell people that they are full of shit.
And so, like, what's kind of is there any sort of like pseudoscience that seems to be taking hold in Sweden? How is just the general population in Sweden, their attitude towards science?
Well, the thing to remember about Scandinavia is that we are extremely secular. Just the general society has sort of left religion behind, and people will get really uncomfortable if you make strong religious expressions either for or against a religious view. And they don't like loud religious people, and they don't like loud atheists either. But that, of course, means that creationism is a non-issue pretty much in Sweden, and we don't get religious people trying to dictate how sex education should be done or anything like that. I guess our single biggest issue is alternative medicine, where there's quite a lot of that.
Okay, Marty, you might be able to fill.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add. I mean, sure, we do get creationists every now and then, but mostly they're not from around here. They're immigrants, usually Muslims. But Yeah, other than that, I pretty much agree. There is quite a bit of alternative medicine and stuff like that in general, sort of new agey stuff. And the
TV shows about spiritual medium.
Yeah, and there are these sort of ghost hunter shows. Seeing, I guess, the rest of the Western world, we have shows like that being made in Sweden as well by some fairly influential people in the media that used to do like talk shows and stuff like that.
But it's not the sort of thing that where the entire population will sit down to watch the Ghost Hunter show, because they're sort of on more marginal TV channels, and
right.
It's considered loopy, I believe. It's not a mainstream belief that you can contact your dead grandma.
No, I'm getting the same impression that there are very few people who take it seriously, but it's still something that gets heard and clearly is considered worth giving airtime to.
Well, I guess it brings in the advertisers.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, in your own field of archaeology, what's the kind of common sort of claims that you've had to deal with and debunk?
Well, we've got a few fringe theorists in Swedish archaeology. They tend to like astronomy, where you look at how archaeological sites relate to celestial events. And I mean, that is, on one hand, a real field of study, where people are doing real archaeological work. But then we've got amateurs doing weirder stuff, and we've got this one guy who he's been doing it for like 15, 20 years about this one site, where he pretty much, it's sort of looks a bit like Stonehenge, and he's sort of camped out there, and he will very aggressively push his views on anybody who shows up there. It's a bit like having somebody in an anorak standing next to Stonehenge 24/7 and yelling at people.
And like, have you ever gone head to head with some of these people? Like, just debated them or argued them, like some of the fringe or just anyone on the other side of the skeptics debate? Have you gone head to head with anyone?
I haven't done it live, but I've been engaged in quite a lot of sniping on the internet and in the media.
Yeah.
But the one time that this guy, the one I mentioned, he wanted to debate me, and I said, sure, if you can get the media on it, because it's not worth my time to go across the country to sit in a village hall in front of 20 believers. But as usual, the media and fringe views. So he makes the local paper about it, but rarely anything bigger than that.
Okay, Kitch, do you have any questions there?
Yes, there's a question from the chat actually. Just trying to get for some reason Skype has just decided to hide the chat on me. There we go.
It's NSA.
This one is from Shangori.
Yeah, Shangori.
Everyone is part of the church in Sweden pretty much by default, which is what he heard. Doesn't the government still give money to the churches based on the amount of people who are part of the church? So even though there aren't people in the church, the money still goes there.
Well, in the year 2000, the Swedish state church was divorced from the Swedish state, so it's now just another religious organization, and this means that they are dropping in membership pretty fast. But also, the Swedish former state church has been identified as a main reason for Sweden being a secular country. There's a sociologist of religion, or sociologist of atheism, really, whose name is Phil Zuckerman, and he studied Danish atheism a few years back and put out a really good book called Society Without God. And he said that the sort of very rational and non-emotional nature of the Swedish state church has led to people sort of staying in that organization but losing all religion. But it's true that they still get some fees, and for me as an archaeologist, I'm kind of happy that they do, because they pay for a lot of the upkeep of Swedish medieval buildings.
Okay, Kitchi, any other questions?
Not at the moment. My brain is fried.
Well, we do have a troll. I think it's a troll anyway, saying, "Can you guys prove you were here 3 billion years ago?" Well, actually, I don't think any one of us claims to have been alive for 3 billion years. Dumbass.
That sounds very New Age. Usually the estimates for when Atlantis was going is slightly later than that.
I was going to say, how do you find, like...
I feel 3 billion years old.
Let's say one thing we've kind of commented on the show before is like how just skeptics are portrayed in the media. I mean, do you come across that? Because skeptics are always portrayed as being, you know, miserable, cynical kind of people.
Well, in the mainstream media, no, we get pretty good press. We've got a lot of very sort of mainstream academics on our board and sort of in our ambit. So, no, we along with the media mainly. Of course, there are fringe publications that hate us and fringe movements that hate us. And we've got this one guy who doesn't like us. He's a believer in astral travel and stuff like that. And he spends, or at least he used to spend, enormous amounts of time sort of reacting to anything we did on his websites and sort of writing about us and stuff. So it was sort of like having a press officer working 50% of full time for you for free, only he's really hostile to the organization. But still, he also put out... gave us a bit of visibility through his actions. But since we're not sort of... I mean, to be a skeptic in the US, you are in some sense yourself a beleaguered minority, sort of fighting against people with a lot of political clout. I mean... 50% of active US voters are willing to vote for the Republican Party. That would not happen in Sweden. I mean, the guy who is the Prime Minister of Sweden right now is he's on the most conservative party that is sort of politically viable in Sweden at all, and he endorsed Obama. He does not endorse the Republicans. So the most sort of hard-headedly conservative Swedish politician is not even on that half of the spectrum of U.S. politics. So our situation as skeptics in Sweden is very different. But I suppose you would recognize that from Scotland, traditionally an enlightened country.
Right. Yeah, well, we do have some problems. Like there's like one newspaper, you probably heard of it, the Daily Mail.
Oh yeah, the Daily Fail.
Yes, which is kind of hardcore anti-science paper.
Oh yeah, they're populist basically.
Yeah. Basically. I mean, do you have anything like that in Sweden, like any kind of like mainstream media? No,
wouldn't say that at all. Our
kind of
it's fringe stuff, basically.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And people who have a voice thanks to the internet, largely. I mean, the people we're warring with these days are people whose existence we wouldn't have known about 20 years ago.
Marty or Kitch, do you have any questions there?
Yeah, I guess I'll go on to the questions about your particular field. Yeah. You're an archaeologist, and you've been having. I saw this. Maybe that was the pre-show here. I don't know. I didn't watch it. You gave a talk about how there's more pseudo-history, pseudo-archaeology than pseudo-bridge building, for example.
Yeah.
If you could just give the short version of that.
Well, that's a talk that's on YouTube. It's about Scandinavian pseudo-archaeology, pretty widely construed. But archaeology is a field that anybody can sort of get engaged in, and that is a good thing, because we get loads and loads of interested amateurs doing useful stuff, because you don't need a particle accelerator to do interesting stuff in archaeology. But then there's the question of how to interpret the results, and then you can get the really wild interpretations from academics as well. And that is because in the humanities, the sort of truth criteria are fuzzier than in, for instance, engineering, because anybody can see if the helicopter flies or not. You don't have that in the humanities. So you're very dependent on source criticism, and I argue that Occam's razor is extremely important in the humanities. That don't stick bits into your interpretation that you don't need to account for the evidence. But we are in the same wing of the university as people who do literature studies and film studies and sort of the whole aesthetic part of the humanities, and for them a has a value of its own, and that of course spills over into archaeology, and has been spilling over into archaeology at least since the 80s when postmodernism came along.
Sorry, I'm back now. Are you going to have a question there, Marty?
No, go ahead.
There was one thing, it's a claim I've come across a lot on the internet, and it's about the pyramids. You're probably groaning already.
Yeah, I've been contacted by a pyramidologist once. Yeah, he was interesting.
The one claim I always get is it would be impossible today to build the pyramids. Is there any truth in this idea at all? Like I said, with all our modern technology, we couldn't do the pyramids, so what is that says something about how they were built?
Well, it would be easy to do it today.
Right.
Yeah, one thing I just thought of it, but I'm surprised I haven't thought of it before. Like, have you ever considered just how they stack cargo containers on ships? It would be just as easy to stack rocks, and those containers are much heavier than the rocks used in the pyramids. Well, most of them anyway.
Not per volume.
No, not per volume. No, that's true. That's true.
But I should say that archaeology is not a science in the same way that chemistry or physics or astronomy is. That where it's sort of, for me to meet a Japanese colleague, if we can talk to each other at all, we won't have a lot to talk about, because what I'm doing in Sweden is completely irrelevant to her in Tokyo, and vice versa, because the archaeological record is so local and regional in its character. So if you into Indonesia, I can dig square holes and I can sieve the dirt, but I'll be completely incapable of classifying anything I find and understanding anything I find. So questions about Egyptian archaeology, then there's a separate type of archaeology for that, Egyptology. And actually that's something you can study in Sweden at one of the departments, but at most departments there's nobody who knows anybody about Egypt. All
right. But like say, is that like one of the most common claims you get specifically on like kind of archaeology? That and probably the stone circles is probably another.
Yes, New Age people love stone circles, and there's endless beautiful stories about them. There's even academic study of New Age offerings at stone circles. Right. So there's people collecting the stuff that hippies leave at sort of Anasazi sites in in the southern US and stuff, and writing about it. And a friend of mine, he was doing surveying with one of these electronic surveying instruments that send an infrared light pulse to measure stuff at one of the sites. I think this was at the Clava Cairns in Scotland. Oh, right. And there were hippies there, and it was a nice sunny day, and they were meditating and picnicking and stuff. And suddenly this very angry hippie girl comes up to my friend, and she says, "It's you, isn't it? You and your machine." And he's like, "Sorry, miss, what?" "I've been tuning into the vibes for hours, and I've listening to it go beep, 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 but it's you and your machine, right? So it's the measuring instrument. Every time he took a measurement, it would go beep beep, and apparently this was the music of the spheres to this to this lady. But I are better than most people because they really care about ancient sites. Most people don't really pay them much attention. So I'd say that even though New Agers can have very strange ideas about archaeology, they are way more interested than most.
We got another question from the chat. This one from an interesting name, Shemale. How's the GMO/vaccine/HIV denial hype in Sweden versus places like America?
All right, those are three. The GMO thing is it's not very big. It tends to be, if you're a health food nut, then you're likely to believe that GMOs are dangerous in some sense. But Swedish environmentalists are pretty well informed about that. They tend, if you ask them, why don't you like gene-modified organisms? And they will say it's because they're tailored for a certain type of pesticide. And we don't want our crops to be tied in with Monsanto pesticide, stuff like that, which is sort of rational. But it's not a huge issue in Sweden. What was the second one this person mentioned?
Vaccine denial.
Vaccines, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We've got islands of vaccine denial. There's this pretty old New Age cult in Sweden, sort of an offshoot of theosophy called anthroposophy. I don't think it's big in the UK or the US, but it's one of Helena Blavatsky's old buddies, and a man named Rudolf Steiner, who started his own New Age cult, and they survive in Sweden, and they have this really strange status in Swedish public life that, unlike other New been around a long time and have a lot of money, they're sort of respected, and they are anti-vaxxers. So around where they have colonies, you'll get these outbreaks of measles and stuff, and obviously the really good vaccines will sort of work in 95% of cases, and you don't know which 95%. So if you got bad luck and you're in school with a lot of anthroposophy kids, then you run a very heightened risk of getting these preventable diseases. And of course, just because your parents are in a spiritual cult, you shouldn't have to deal with measles either. And the third one, what was that?
HIV denial, I think.
HIV.
Oh, I think that's not on the map in Sweden. Everybody knows how that works.
Yeah. Yeah, we have sex ed in school, so.
Yes.
Seeing as you're taking the chat room questions, there's a few more.
Sure. Did Sweden... Okay, this one's... I think this guy's taking the piss. Did Sweden really invent IKEA? Or was it of alien origin? Just invented to piss us off assembling that shit.
Well, the cool secret behind IKEA is that the E and the A are the initials of two extremely small villages in southern Sweden, where Kamprad, the founder of the company, had his first, I guess, factories. So it's an acronym for Ingvar Kamprad, what's the one? Emmaboda Agunnaryd, I think. Two really small places in the Swedish highlands where nobody wears a kilt. But of course, we make IKEA jokes as well. And when Swedes travel globally and get a yearning for preserve and meatballs and lingonberry jam and stuff like that, IKEA is where we go.
Okay, there's one more from Bod to Bits. How much does climatology research impact Martin? Thinking about prehistoric disappearance of the Big Lake, can't remember the name, and foundation of Stockholm.
The foundation of what?
Stockholm.
Stockholm. Sorry, Stockholm.
Oh, right. Well, we don't really think of it as climatology research, though it is sort of. Quaternary geology is geology about the loose stuff that is sitting on top of bedrock. And a classic field for Swedish quaternary geologists is shoreline displacement. Because there used to be a glaciation, the Ice Age. Scandinavia was covered in a 3 kilometer thick sheet of ice, and it sort of pushed a dent in the surface of the planet. And since the ice melted off, the dent is rebounding, and Sweden is rising out of the Baltic Sea, which means that everything I look at professionally in archaeology is sort of sorted chronologically from old stuff on mountaintops to new stuff at the current shoreline. So that's really important. But it only partly has more to do with what the bedrock is doing. Obviously, rock is moving independently of the sea level. So if the polar ices start melting in a big way, which seems likely, then a several thousand-year-old trend in Scandinavia of land coming out of the water will reverse or stop, and the shoreline may start to encroach back on land. So I don't recommend anybody to buy shorefront at the moment until we can get a handle on the CO2 levels.
Okay, another one.
Oh, okay. This one's from guest 809143 blah blah blah.
That's a charming name.
Yes. Rolls off the tongue.
Clearly an attractive individual.
Yes.
Ah, yes. A man of many digits. What are some good resources for well-supported information about Viking Age Scandinavia?
Well, I'd say start at your local university library, because there you'll find really good stuff. Trouble is, Scandinavian scholars tend to view the Viking period as a Scandinavian phenomenon, so we publish in Scandinavian languages. Of course, if you're in the UK, you tend to think that, well, no, the Vikings, there are a problem. They show up in 793 and sack Lindisfarne Monastery, and they establish the Danelaw. So something I often have to explain to people is that Viking is not an ethnic term. You cannot it's a job, not an ethnic term. So nobody was a Viking all of their life, because you were only a Viking for a few years when you were young, and no women were Vikings. So we just think of these people as Norse people. But good resources about the Viking period. Any library should have a reasonable handbook about them, and the Wikipedia article is okay. There's you do get the Wikipedia article about Odin or Woden, the pagan god, keeps getting chunks of text inserted. People interested in video games, so they will explain the role of Odin in Final Fantasy VII. But I believe the editors of Wikipedia are doing a pretty good job of shunting that sort of information over into their own articles.
Yeah. Marty, do you want to come in with anything there?
Not at the moment.
All right. Kitch, do you have any questions related there?
Yes, actually, you said that vaccine denial was... you said there wasn't much issues with GMO or HIV denial, but I find that vaccine denial or vaccine hysteria it's a bit of a problem in Sweden compared to the others. Why do you think it's just vaccine denial and not the others, the other crap?
Well, because vaccine denial has been huge in other countries. So we got a pretty mild case of vaccine denial. But I mean, let's remember that Andrew Wakefield got into the Lancet. So just judging by that yardstick, you'd think that there's probably something to it. And also, there's something... People don't really know what a gene is. And they think that HIV is something you will only contract if you visit steamy sauna clubs. But everybody knows what vaccination is, and it's. I mean, most mentally healthy people will not easily stick a needle into a baby. That's not something you like to think about. So it's easy to think that there's probably something nasty about that. They're sticking a needle into my baby and injecting stuff that has something to do with illness in the kid. Of course, it's easy to jump to the conclusion that that's a... And of course, it's been a long time since anybody in Sweden had polio. And people have had time to forget. I mean, if you ask anybody born in the 30s or 40s about vaccination, they will say, you need to vaccinate my grandchildren now, because they remember what it was like.
Yeah.
Okay, there are questions coming up about chiropractics.
Yeah,
And that's interesting, because I've actually encountered that particular stuff, but I don't know how much of that is pseudoscience. Isn't it more like there is some actual benefit to it, but the pseudoscience is that it's supposed to have other benefits as well? Or I haven't really looked into that.
Well, the original chiropractic invented in the late 19th century, early 20th, had extremely wide claims. This guy said that, well, anything you suffer from is because your vertebrae are not aligned. I can realign your vertebrae and you're going to be fine. Of course, most Swedish chiropractors don't make those claims anymore.
Exactly.
But if I understand the research correctly, what you can get out of chiropractic is a pretty good short-term relief for back pain.
Yeah.
But if you look in your calendar, how many days did I have back pain, then you won't get well faster using the services of a chiropractor. You just get relief from the pain. But I believe that for back pain, chiropractors have a pretty good reputation in Sweden, probably undeservedly good. But then there are other weird versions of chiropractic, like osteopathy and stuff like that. I remember, funnily, I grew up in a slightly new agey home, and when I started going bald in my 20s, my dad said, well, my osteopath, he told me you should rub your fingernails together because that will stimulate hair growth. You need to do that to keep from going bald. And then when I met my wife, she's Chinese, and I was introduced to her parents. They didn't like me being bald either. The Chinese people don't like baldies. So my mother-in-law, very considerately, she decided that she needed to do something about that. So she fed me bald animals, as you do, because if you eat bald animals, then you will get hairy. So I got...
Sounds like homeopathy almost.
No. This is traditional Chinese medicine. They've been doing it for 1,000 years. There can't be anything wrong with it. So I had the snake soup, which was nice. The snake was nice, and I had turtle, and that was pretty nasty. It was more like this really old egg-laying hen that you boiled into submission without any salt. And there's no way to repeat the experiment, so nobody knows how bald I would be today if I hadn't eaten the snake and the turtle. But anyway, chiropractic is, I'd say, it's probably the most respected alternative medicine modality in Sweden. But few chiropractors will offer to cure cancer.
Yeah.
We're not going to ask that question. He's gotten that more than enough the past few months. Kitch, there's a few new questions there in the chat there.
Okay, grand. Should legal... this is from Mechanic 1C. Should legal action be taken against vaccine denial and other harmful things, or would that be unjust, even though it is helpful for real health?
No, I think free speech is a good thing. I think we should just make clear distinctions who's talking. So that's something that the media, they have a responsibility not to give just anybody a platform on health issues. A few years back, we had Dr. Fat in Swedish media. Every time they didn't have anything to put on the fly sheet, they would call Dr. Fat, and she would make up something about how you could cure cancer by not eating carbs and eating fat instead, and they would put that on the fly sheet and be happy. I'd say to Miss Mechanic that we should not curtail free speech, but we should train good journalists who can tell a good source from a bad source.
Okay. This is from another guest. Are you a member of the Swedish Humanist Organization?
Excellent question. I was going to talk about that. I am not, because I don't care about metaphysical issues. So in other countries, skepticism and atheism or humanism is very closely allied, such as in the US. But in Sweden, we've got the Scientific Skeptics, and that's where I'm the chairperson. And we only deal in issues that can be approached scientifically. And then we've got the Swedish Humanists, which is also a very thriving organization. They're even a bit bigger than us, and they're into the whole thing. They can organize a godless bar mitzvah for you if you want, or a godless funeral. And my kid went to godless confirmation camp with them. Simply because I don't care about those issues. And Sweden is one of the, or even the country on the planet where religion has the least influence in politics. So my attitude would be very different if I was in Alabama.
Right. I think that there's this idea that skepticism and atheism have something to do with each other. I agree that it doesn't really have to be that way. I mean, I'm an atheist because of my skepticism, but I don't really see the two as necessarily related.
Yeah,
It's like if religious people keep their mouths shut, there's nothing there to be skeptical about. So really, there's no need to be an outspoken atheist just because you're an outspoken skeptic.
yeah.
And with the Swedish cultural climate, people will think you're weird if you're an outspoken atheist.
Yeah.
Partly because there's really nothing to fight
Exactly.
against in Sweden. So, but we sometimes get this in the Swedish skeptics. Shouldn't we be harder on the religious people? And I think we are hard on them when they make testable claims. But I mean, if somebody's going to tell you that Jesus loves all the children, then I don't feel that that's an issue for scientific inquiry.
No.
But if this person said Jesus wants you to quit doing your mammograms or taking your meds, then we will be interested in the issue.
She can ask the
Sure.
two questions. Yeah, there's some silly questions coming in.
Okay.
Fine.
Is it this one bought the bits? Is it high time that the Swedish learned that a sandwich requires 2 slices of bread?
Well, what do we have to learn about sandwiches? Sweden doesn't really have a cuisine. We only have a collection of food preservation techniques, but we're learning, and I can assure this person that in my home we are eating some excellent Chinese.
This one's from Shemale. Does Rundkvist and Mortimer vote Pira Partiet?
Piratpartiet.
Oh, right. That's our libertarian online freedom party. I don't. I vote Social Democrat, Labour.
And I keep my political views to myself.
Oh.
Yeah. That's also a very Swedish attitude. Many Swedes believe that keeping your political affiliation secret is not a right, it is a duty.
Yeah. I don't see it as a duty. I just see it as whenever politics comes up, when skeptics or atheists are talking about it, it divides the audience, because it's like people tend to think that, well, I'm a skeptic and I come to this conclusion, so should other skeptics. And when they realize that you can't think that way about politics, you end up
hilarity ensues.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have people who can't post a video on YouTube without the comment section being full of people calling them Nazis or communists or whatever.
Yeah.
So I've decided to keep my political opinions to myself.
Well, traditionally in Sweden, it goes all the way back to the labor movement of the late 1800s.
Yeah.
Sort of a free association of people with a foreign common interest will traditionally be non-political and non-religious. So that will be sort of in the bylaws of almost every Swedish association. I mean, the Swedish Dog Breeders Association is, they have to spell out in their bylaws that we're not into doing religious or political issues, which is kind of overkill, but
yeah.
What was I going to say about that? Oh, never mind.
Right.
Okay, Mechanic 1C again. That question relates to whether skepticism has to that question relates to whether skepticism has to do with education. It seems to be more of a mindset, or is it something that can be taught? Because a lot of religious people just seem to keep their mind closed. That's yeah.
Well, it definitely has to do with education, and critical thinking is a critical part of a good education, which is why people in Alabama homeschool, because they want to control their kids' access to information. I've raised my kids to use the internet pretty much any way they like. Only the computer they do it on is in the living room where everybody else is. So we don't police what sites they can go to, but we police the environment in which they use the computer at all.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's worked well for us. And once when my son was like 11 or something, he asked me, "Dad, what is so wrong about porn?" And I said, "Well, a lot of porn there's nothing wrong with. It's just that you're 11 and I think you'd be feeling queasy if you ran into it. So it's something you will probably be very interested in. At your age, I would simply avoid it." And he apparently accepted that reply.
Someone in the chat keeps commenting about how Swedish education is getting worse. I have to say I agree in some cases and disagree in others. I'd like to know more about that, if the person could elaborate.
Sweden, Martin.
I think when it comes to math and science, the grades are going down. Yeah. There was a study published not long ago that was pretty embarrassing, but we're used to being at one of the best nations in the world, and we're dropping, but it's not like we're way behind.
But also embarrassingly, you only need to swim a very cold river to get to Finland, where they're absolute top on the planet.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think the public feeling is that Swedish school has become too touchy-feely. That a generation of teachers have sort of been brought up with the wrong aims. And I know people who teach at the Royal Technical College in Stockholm, and they say that, well, we need to start every first semester with what used to be high school math, which is of course sad. For me, I teach as well, and I guess what I can see is that many students are not great at writing, but I don't know if they were great at writing before either. I can't really tell.
No, I guess we're just not. We don't have the same requirements in high school, I guess, as other countries in some cases. I don't know. But I agree. Writing is something that students have been getting much worse at, and it's true that we don't teach enough math in the math class in high school. It's we're focusing way too much on arithmetics, and basically, even when well, I guess I'll just leave it at that. We don't require people to take more math. There's a lot of optional stuff that I think shouldn't really be optional.
But then also there's a problem of pedagogy as a sort of evidence-based discipline, because if there was a consensus about how to teach kids, then we would be following that consensus, but there's not. So pedagogy is still very, it's almost sort of on a Freudian level if you start asking around about how to do things. So it's hard to find sort of a consensus to build your best practices on.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's something you get nearly in every country now. There's always going to be people decrying education. It's like someone in the chat room said nostalgia was much better in my day.
Gandalf used to be much older in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
That's something I've seen with my contact with Chinese culture. Chinese culture is obsessed with study. So kids will to evening school and to Saturday school, and they study like mad, but they don't turn into Einstein. They become just ordinary folks. Stars, even though they get their childhoods ruined by this constant study. So I'm pretty sure what we're lacking is not sort of volume of teaching or volume of homework. It's more qualitative than quantitative.
Exactly.
Right, Kitch, have you got anything there? You were quite silent.
Sorry, I was just kind of just absorbing all that because I don't really know much about Sweden or Swedish culture or skepticism in Sweden. So,
well, ask us anything. Mortimer and I can tell you.
No, but I was thinking there, Kitch, kind of, have you noticed, like you're doing a PhD, are you noticing that with students coming through? Is their education, is it better or worse, do you find?
Maths, education in maths is going, the quality in maths is going down over the recent years, and they're trying something new now to try to bring the maths grades up. I think they're increasing the college, but they're increasing the importance of maths in the Leaving Cert, which is basically the SATs in Ireland. They're increasing what maths is worth. So basically in the Leaving Cert, your score is converted to points.
Okay.
And if you get an A, it's 100 points, B is 80, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So if they're saying now if you get an A, you get a lot more points. And then that's you're competing for places in the university. But I've noticed just the last 2 years in university that I think it's just biotech, but a lot of people who are applying for biotechnology don't really seem to have a good handle on maths. I think that's maybe just because people who are going into biology they're going into biology. They wouldn't really want to handle maths. If they did, they'd be going into physics or chemistry, much more mathematical based.
Want to look at frogs. Actually, in Sweden, we have a hard time filling the classes in on the programs that will give you a well-paid job, and that is largely because the students feel that, well, in order to become an engineer or a software engineer, I need to do maths, and that's hard. So I prefer to go study archaeology. And I've been looking at this for years, and it's really strange to see how little self-preservation instinct they have, the students. But I guess they're 19, and they don't really look far into the future and what needs they're going to have when they're 35.
Yeah.
For me, it was definitely in school, like taught mathematics especially. They never taught you how this can be used. I do remember. I mean, I still do enjoy. Like I'm doing like a distance learning mathematics degree at the moment. But at the time, it'd been explained to me, well, this could be used in designing some kind of laser system or something like that. I think that would have helped a lot, but it was just, endless equations on a blackboard with no real explanation as to why this is so
almost
vital.
like chess problems.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, was that your experience as well, Martin and Marty?
Yeah, pretty much. I had a very good math teacher though, so it worked out anyway.
Yeah, I had a similar experience, but it wasn't a problem for me that it was chess problems. It was fun to explore that. And Mrs. Frösén, as she was called, she was also an excellent math teacher. Later, I've forgotten all the calculus I learned, but I've learned a bit about multivariate statistics instead, which is more useful to archaeologists.
All right, well, that's kind of led me in. Like, there are a lot of mathematics involved in.
More stats. You need to understand statistics to do archaeology, but you don't need calculus or differential calculus.
And that's something really strange, because in high school I teach high school math, so it's very, very little statistics. Almost nothing. We just basically touch on it and then leave it at that. And I think that's really sad, because it's so important.
I remember the epiphany I had when my friend explained to me why 3 six-sided dice formed a bell curve and what that meant.
Yeah.
I hadn't noticed that if you roll 3 six-sided dice to make a Dungeons and Dragons character, they tend to give you a 10 or 11. Yeah. It's sort of obvious once you find out.
Is it true that colleges in Sweden are free, or is that just
archaeologies?
Universities?
Colleges.
Oh, right. Yes. And anybody can get a state study loan, which is a very good loan. I mean, you don't pay a high interest rate on it. But recently we started asking for foreign students to pay in Sweden, which they didn't do previously. But Sweden has this strong ethos of meritocracy, and if you're a smart kid from a working class home, then pretty much the system is open to you. Obviously, there will be cultural barriers, but if you're bright and you want to study, then you can do that in Sweden. And we don't have sort of the Harvards or the Oxfords or Cambridges in Sweden. There is a difference between the older universities and the newer ones, but it's such a tiny place. Sweden has only 9 million people and like 6 or 7 big universities.
Yeah, and they all have pretty much the same thing. There are some courses that aren't available in every university, but there's no huge difference.
True, and I don't think the employers will look at your diploma and say, well, he did his MA in Kalmar, so we're not going to employ him.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to ask, have you ever seen it's a TV show we have in the UK called Time Team? It's an archaeology show, and how do you feel
we love Time Team. That's excellent. Taught everybody what geophys is.
Yeah. Do you think it does
the main guy, he died just recently. I'm not talking about Baldrick. I'm talking about the archaeology professor. Everybody really mourned him. He was well loved, but it hasn't been shown on the air in Sweden, so it tends to be something people pick up on Discovery Channel, I believe. Yeah.
I was just going to say, do you feel that does a good job of presenting archaeology in a good way to the public?
Yeah, and everybody gets interested and knowledgeable, and it's really good stuff. I wish we had something similar. Actually, people have told me that I should be Baldrick on a Swedish Time Team, and I just always tell them, yeah, sure, just offer me insane amounts of money, and I'm your Huckleberry.
Yeah. Okay. There was a question here. What would you say is the basic broad difference between people in the US and Sweden?
Wow.
That's a very big question.
I wonder who the basic broad is. What's her name? Well, I am a former I grew up in Connecticut, so in Sweden you're not supposed to be loud and self-assertive. So since that's something I suffer from, I tell people, well, I'm loud and self-assertive because I'm American, and you're xenophobic when you don't like me. So that is a difference in the sort of cultural mode, that Swedes are traditionally not as loud, and Another is that Swedes have until recently been completely oblivious to the race issue.
Yeah.
We didn't have many ideas about people with other skin colors because there were none. But now, obviously, I live in an area with 70 nationalities, and around here, I think people are behaving really well to each other. It's nice to see the integration. The second generation immigrants speak excellent Swedish around here, and people intermarry, and I like when you run into this Chilean grandmother and the Afghanistani grandmother sitting around in the sun speaking broken Swedish to each other, because that's the only language they have in common. Well, it's a big question, and I don't know the name of the broad.
I guess one thing is that when it comes to the American fake politeness, that's something we don't have.
Right, when you use people's Christian name all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we call each other by our first names, and we have a word for sir or ma'am, but we never use it. That's
archaic.
People did that way back.
You know what I heard? A friend of mine, he was at a supermarket in Texas, and when he left, the check girl said in a bored tone, "Missing you already." Because they had instructed their staff to tell the customers that they were missing them already. Fake politeness.
Okay, there's a chat room question just came in from Shangori. It's, how is the internet and the amount of misinformation influencing skepticism?
I think the internet is excellent for skepticism because we get to put out information. Yeah. I mean, there's a strong feeling among people with fringe ideas that there's an unholy alliance between skepticism and Wikipedia, which is obviously the site with the most hits on the entire internet. But there is no alliance between skepticism and Wikipedia. It's just that Wikipedia and skepticism both follow the scientific method and pay attention to scientific credibility. Yeah. So, I'm an active Wikipedian, and every now and then somebody asks me to take a look at an article where there's someone making funny claims. And no, the internet obviously makes us aware of people with really, really weird ideas, and sometimes you need to remember that it's not worth debating with people who are not going to change their minds when they don't have a platform anyway.
On the subject of Wikipedia, that's something that, like someone is saying in the chat room now, some of my friends claim that Wikipedia cannot be trusted. I like to say that, well, Wikipedia can usually be trusted, but it shouldn't be regarded as an authority on anything.
But Wikipedia doesn't claim authority.
Exactly.
Wikipedia offers references.
Exactly. You should check the references. Wikipedia is a great starting point.
Yeah. I think it's like a lot of people. Yeah, that's what you say. It's a good place to start off. A
lot of the information there would be impossible to find at all if it wasn't on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned it there. Have you ever seen or read the website Conservapedia? Yes, I'll take a...
I've looked around the place. It's so easy to troll them because if you write something satirical on Conservapedia, the regular user will take it as gospel. Yeah. I think that I feel sorry for them.
Yeah. And have you, Justin, have you read anything related to your own work on there? Well, just like in archaeology, have you read any crazy archaeology stuff there?
On Conservapedia? No, I have not. I guess what might find its way into Conservapedia is radiocarbon denialism.
All right.
People who want the planet to be 6,000 years old don't like the radiocarbon method to date stuff. I mean, just looking at where I am in Stockholm, Sweden, by the time God created the heavens and the earth, people had been hunting seals in the Stockholm area for 2,000 years. So I guess if I wanted to find something crazy on Conservapedia, I'd look first at the article about radiocarbon dating. Yeah.
In my field, because, well, I do electronics, but I work, it's an oil-related thing. Article on oil formation, at the least.
Does it have a slant that oil will never run out, or?
No, it's just how the oil formed. It's the theobaric.
Oh, there was greater pressure before the flood or something like that?
Yeah, and then when the flood happened, it compacted.
Oh, wow.
And
Scriptural petrochemics.
Yeah, and basically that oil can form in decades. So we've got nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
There was a question.
Yeah, that was stupid.
All right. Sorry, did you have something there, Kitch?
No, sorry. I'm still just reeling over that claim.
All right. There's a question from Durakan. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. What do you think of the idea of teaching students programming as a way to teach maths and physics?
Well, I'm the wrong guy to ask.
Yeah.
I think that sounds great.
All right.
Yeah.
I actually, one of the things that got me to think math was fun was actually that when I was like 13 or something, I got my first own PC and I started programming because I had an older friend who had started playing around with Pascal, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I still
think Pascal is the best language.
All right.
Yeah, it's well, yeah, I like C as well, but
that's fucking ugly.
Oh, it's ugly, yes, but it's the one I've been working the most with. But anyway, yeah, the idea of understanding concepts like variables you can take from programming and apply in math, and I thought that was really useful.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I had a computer as well. I don't know if anyone know the Amstrad or that ring.
Oh yeah.
There was a magazine you got every month, and it had these type-ins, and it was actual programs you could type in yourself. But they broke it down to explain what each section was doing, and you were able to make like, the snake game or something like that, and it kind of showed you how like the mathematics behind it, and so it was that's. I think in my generation, that's how a lot of people got into maths. It was the computer boom at the time, and I think the home computer at that time, anyone could program. You just picked it up and you got a book with your computer, but you don't have that now with a PC as such.
Yeah, me and my friends, it was the Commodore 64, where when you switched it on, you were immediately interpreting BASIC. So that made programming extremely accessible. Yeah. Good stuff. I'd agree with Mortimer that it cannot hurt and probably will stimulate anybody to be more interested in maths.
Yeah, because I think that's what the Raspberry Pi might be doing right now.
Really? Isn't it too arcane for the kids?
Apparently in the UK anyway, it's been very, very popular here.
Oh,
because
I'm glad.
Because it can connect to the internet, and one of the things I've seen that one kid managed to do was he managed to program it and he took it to a racetrack, like where they were having horse racing, and he'd written a program where it could update like with the odds for betting on the horses. And I think there's a lot of they have competitions in the schools to see what the kids can come up with using the Raspberry Pi.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Like there was something someone was saying there, which I didn't from, and that was they were saying that science has a liberal bias, which I say it does, because. And I think what they were trying to get at was like, the conservatives seem to deny science. There's still plenty of it on the liberal side, I find.
Different issues, basically, isn't it?
I mean, science is just neutral, really. It doesn't have any bias as such.
Yeah, it's not a political thing, so...
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Marty or Kitch, do you have any questions there? I'll check the chat room and see what they're saying.
Let's see. Oh, okay. I'll just get to this because someone asked before, and I have a related question about pseudo-archaeology, the whole Atlantis thing, which I'm sure you're sick of. I also happen to be sick of it because I've been dealing with New Agers who have been talking about that. And do you know how this whole thing started and how, where the story comes from? What?
I find that the New Agers are surprisingly poorly read. They usually only know about Atlantis from sort of New Age treatments of it.
Exactly.
So they've never read Plato.
Yeah, because that's the earliest mention of it that I have been able to find. But
it is the earliest mention.
Yeah, thank you.
But what he says is that this is stuff that I got from Solon, and Solon got it from priests in Egypt.
Right.
But,
anonymous priests.
Yes, exactly. And Solon is a real guy, but the work where he possibly mentioned Atlantis hasn't survived, and nobody knows about the Egyptian priests. There's nothing in Egyptian literature, ancient Egyptian literature that tallies with Atlantis. And it's not important to Plato whether it's real or not. He's using it as sort of a model society when he's talking about the ideal state.
Exactly.
So, of course, he will.
Just to mention it, I did read Critias and Timaeus, the parts of it that are actually available. So.
Oh, well done. That's more than most people have done. There's a new translation of Plato into Swedish.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. No. There's a funny connection to Sweden. In the 17th century, Sweden was a very sudden major political player on stage for a brief while, and they needed sort of national. Professor at Uppsala wrote an enormous book. Everything pretty much started in Sweden, and he said that, well, what Plato is describing is really ancient Sweden. And he pointed to, for instance, there's a village on Gotland, this island in the Baltic, named Atlingbo, and ATL Atlingbo, Atlantis. It's plain to see. I'm currently finishing the old trippy 70s conspiracy book series of Illuminatus, and there's a lot of Atlantic lore in there. So it's good fun for fiction, and obviously, if you visit a New Age fair in Sweden, you will run into endless Atlantean dolphin jewelry and stuff like that.
Are you familiar with the claims about the 13 emerald tablets?
I haven't read those. No, sounds like something out of H.P. Lovecraft. What's on them?
Pretty much. I don't remember. It was some weird cultish guy who claims that some king of Atlantis came to him in a vision and whatever. It just gets dumber from there.
Is this Joseph Smith?
No, I don't remember his name.
I think his tablets were golden.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't remember. Some people are suggesting stuff in the chat room and it doesn't ring a bell. It's not Melchizedek. He's more recent. Whatever, screw it.
Yeah. The thing is, that's not the worst part of what you're having to deal with.
Oh, no.
But that's a funny thing about how people look at. People want those 13 emerald tablets or golden tablets or whatever with writing on them, because that's sort of how they believe that you get information about the past. Whereas I'm a prehistorian. The people I studied didn't read or write at all. So to me, written matter is usually not relevant unless I'm looking at the Viking period, basically, when people outside of Sweden start writing about Sweden. A lot of people, they get a bit disappointed when they come to prehistoric archaeology, and it's all types of pottery and flaked flint implements, and instead of giving them names and wars and battles and stuff, we'll tell them that, well, yeah, and then there was an increased influence from Denmark. We can see that in the pottery decoration. They will go yawn. No, I'm going to go watch Stargate.
Okay, there was a general one. Just, are you a Lovecraft fan?
Oh yeah, I love Lovecraft. I reread one big chunk of him just this past summer.
All right. The question was the 9/11 Truth Movement. Does that have any kind of voice in Sweden?
I think I've seen it mentioned once or twice in really fringe situations, but to Swedes, 9/11 is not a defining moment. It's we are Americanized, but not that Americanized.
Yeah, it does come up quite a bit here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I know a friend of mine and his brother actually went round. He lives in some small village in Scotland. He was going up on the telegraph poles, putting up 9/11 was an inside job on them. In this village, in a village of 200 people, I don't know what he thought he was going to achieve.
It's a bit like taking a stand in the conflict between Crips and Bloods in a small Scottish village.
Yeah.
But I guess he wanted the sheeple to wake up or something like that.
I have no idea what his idea was. Marty, there's that I don't know, is that a read question or something? I don't know.
What?
The last question you'll see in the Skype chat.
Oh, Skype chat, sorry.
Yeah.
I've fallen behind there.
Yeah,
whose birds are chirping in the background?
That would be mine.
Yeah.
Are they budgies or what?
Yeah. Okay.
I used to keep budgies when I was a kid. They're nice.
Yeah.
I think Marty's...
They just can't shut up.
Yeah.
That's my problem with them. Okay, someone is asking, what are you wearing?
A leather bikini? No, I'm wearing Red Sonja's chainmail bikini right now.
Someone said that, what about just conspiracy theories in general? Is that something you've come across with the Skeptics Association?
Oh yeah, conspiracy theories are directly linked to mental illness, because if you are borderline psychotic, you will sort of have your agency-seeking faculties will be working overtime in your head, and you will see everything to be meaningful and intended by someone. Yeah, you get a lot of conspiracy theories on the fringier side of things. We always joke about it in the Swedish Skeptics, how we're obviously agents of the Illuminati, and at one time we were both Nazis and controlled by the Labour Party, according to to various movements.
I've noticed that it's not just the mentally ill, but also people who aren't particularly bright in general. There's this, when I was studying pedagogy, I was taught about this thing, I believe it was called hostile interpretation bias, where you essentially, it's especially true with kids, that they will, if someone bumps into you from behind, he pushed you. It wasn't that he tripped and fell. It must.
And
have
this
been
is something everybody has, or
no? It's very common among children.
Yes.
That you assume that something is intentional if it's bad.
Oh right, yes.
And this is something that people tend to grow out of, but people who are, shall we say, to use the politically incorrect term, stupid, don't actually grow out of this.
But it's a larger issue too. I mean, that brings in religion, where religious people have a feeling that everything is sort of being monitored by the big guy in the sky, and no sparrow falls to the ground without him noticing and stuff like that. Yeah. Whereas, as one of these sort of Lovecraftian, mechanistic poor sods, we just feel that shit happens, and a lot of it is happening all the time.
Rich, do you want to come in with something there? I'm quiet again.
Sir, is there are there people out there who believe in other mystical cities or fictitious cities, such as Atlantis? Or is it just Atlantis is the biggest? Well,
there used to be the hunt for El Dorado story.
Okay.
El Dorado in Spanish means the gilded one, the gilded man, there was this story back in the 16th century about a civilization of Indians somewhere in South America where they would gild their king with gold dust for festivals, and he would swim in a sacred lake, and all the gold dust would sort of wash off him and end up at the bottom of the lake. And a lot of the early conquistador incursions into South America was motivated by the search for this fabulous place, sort of Shangri-La, where people were wading in gold. But as far as I know, nobody has been able to find El Dorado in Sweden yet, but I wouldn't put it past them.
The question there, now it's gone. Sorry, there was something related to that here. Marty, can you take over? I try and remember what I was going to say there. So it was related to archaeology.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
The podcast's logo seems to be Thor's hammer, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a modified version of it.
Yeah, so is anybody in the group a neo-pagan?
Nope.
No.
No.
It's just, we're bringing the hammer down on stupidity, and I suggested that if we're going to do a hammer, let's do a
Proper hammer.
yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, I have some religious friends. They're not very religious, but they identify as Christians. And I also have a friend, Eddie, the neo-pagan goldsmith. He's a member of my gaming group, and he's also a big martial arts instructor and Star Wars fan. Just all around lovely guy, and he sacrifices bacon in the woods. And I think he gives his girlfriend one or two, which is also part of his pagan outlook. But I have to explain to people all the time that I don't find new religions sillier than the old ones, just that they're newer.
Yeah.
I mean, the precepts of Babylonian polytheism are really silly, but it's a very old religion.
Sorry, there was...
So
sorry, I've got the question.
basically, the respect a faith will be given is proportional to its political clout.
The question I had was, have you seen or are you aware of the film Zeitgeist?
Yeah, isn't that one of those 9/11 truther things?
Part of it is, but part of it deals with... Marty, have you seen it?
Yeah, I started watching Rage Quit after about a couple of seconds. It's basically some idea about how Christianity is a huge conspiracy as well, I think.
Yeah,
All right.
There's 3 sections
they're
to it.
trying to present themselves as being skeptical, like, you know, they're taking a skeptical look at Christianity, and then they basically say, I don't remember what it is they actually propose, but it's something just equally unfounded.
Christianity was based on astrology and the Egyptian religions or something.
Yeah, and I think there's some truth to that, and that.
Well, would that make
there
it
are
less
elements-
believable? I don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are elements of other religions found in Christianity, but I mean, that doesn't imply that it's an intentional conspiracy to do whatever.
But a lot of criticism against Christianity, people keep rehashing stuff that was discovered in the early 19th century as if this was something really new. That, hey, we've discovered that there were several writers behind the Old Testament. Yeah.
We know.
We've moved on.
See, on that note, have you had to deal much with, it's something we get quite a lot on YouTube now, and it's from the Muslims about the scientific knowledge of the Quran. Is that something you've had to deal with at all?
Well, I've heard it mentioned, but
Marty,
I know that is something you will be told from the pulpit in mosques. But it's sort of a general part of a general high evaluation of the Quran. That the Quran is great. It's the foundation of our faith. Here are all the ways in which the Quran is great. Oh, and by the way, it also predicted atomic power.
Yeah, the one I keep hearing is Quran. Well,
Which they don't even believe in.
Yes.
No, In a Lutheran context, it's really silly to be looking for science in the scriptures, as some people do, because Lutheranism is all about believing without proof. So if you're looking for proof, then you are a bad Lutheran.
Yeah.
And it always turns out that we discovered the theory, and then the Bible is used to say, oh, but we predicted that.
Yeah. We just realized that we predicted that. It's like Nostradamus. Nostradamus has never been able to predict anything beforehand, but you can always read stuff into him.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like, well, I told you before the show, I grew up in the Outer Hebrides, and there's a big legend of a prophet up there that a lot of people, including some very close relatives of mine, they take extremely seriously.
A Christian prophet?
Just a prophet, that's all. It's not necessarily Christian. It's not tied into that. And because I lived in an island, and like there was the boat that would go to the mainland, and apparently there was some prophecy saying that because the island is called Lewis, the Isle of Lewis shall say, or a great disaster shall befall the Isle of Lewis, and the only survivor will be a woman wearing red shoes and a woman with a Bible. And then we got a new boat about 10 years ago, and it was called the Isle of Lewis. And I remember I was like the first 2 weeks, nearly every woman that went on that boat had red shoes on.
Wow!
Yeah, that's how seriously it was taken. And
but talk about self-fulfilling prophecy.
And then like there was, and it so happened on the sailing I was on, this woman, and there was a nun on board, and everyone crowded around. Everyone was staying close to her just in case the boat sank.
But that's funny how they were interpreting the prophecy to be really sort of literalist stickler sort of thing. That, well, maybe they were referring to the boat and not to the island. Yeah,
and there was another prophecy made, like it was about Inverness, that when 5 bridges cross the river, that there'll be a great disaster in the world, and the 5th bridge was built in 1939. And what happened? That's the great disaster. But then I looked it up, and there's no actual evidence this guy even existed.
Well, if you look at modern psychics, they will often retrofit their predictions after the fact. So you need to put their websites into the Wayback Machine.
I mean, I've had that, like when I go home and had debates with some of my relatives, and I've told them, look, what about all these other predictions he got these right? There's got to be something to this. What about, they always say, but what about the ones he got right? And I say, well, how many did he get wrong? And there's like a big stack of things that just haven't happened yet.
It would be very helpful if you could identify the real ones before.
If you keep on making predictions, you're bound to get some slightly correct if you're willing to bend what you say.
Yeah. Just as long as you've got a willing believer.
That's just, it's taken hold so much. Like, if you ever visit the island, there's people who gladly tell you about it. Because, like, I know in my family, they were great believers in second sight and prophecy and all. Like not my immediate, but like a few generations back.
I hear the Icelanders are pretty big on that too. They believe both in traditional pixies and in spirit mediums and stuff like that. So they seem to be pretty strange in their beliefs.
Yeah, because...
did you know there was this belief in the 19th century that there would be surviving traditions of old poetry and stuff, particularly on Arran? Isn't that one of the Outer Hebrides? Or is that one of the...
Arran's the Inner Hebrides. Find on Facebook who is.
Okay, well, so folklorists were going there and interviewing everybody above the age of 60 and trying to find these legendary tradition carriers, and they never did, sadly.
All right, we are coming up for the last 5 minutes. So, and here we've got one. Someone managed to get a question in for the end. Are there any pagan religions and beliefs that survived the Christianization of Europe?
Well, to this day, Swedes don't really like to eat horse flesh. And that is weird because there's no sort of scriptural ban on that at all. But we know that eating horse flesh was a very important part of pagan cult. So in order after winter, you needed to sacrifice horses, and the king would ceremonially cook horse flesh and feed his closest circle. And probably that's part of an old tradition from Christianization, that you need to quit eating horse flesh, and that we still don't like doing that in Sweden. But I don't know anywhere in Europe where a pagan cult has survived. You get a long period where sort of folklore survives, but is different from the old real paganism.
Yeah.
For instance, a friend of mine told me that traditional Sami ritual singing, it's called yoiking. There was this hope in the 19th century that if we got down the lyrics for all the yoiks, we will find remnants of Sami paganism. It turned out that they were yoiking lyrics from the Swedish church's official hymnal of the late 17th century. There was nothing left of their traditional beliefs in the yoik.
But then you have all these ideas. Like, there's someone saying now that there are still pagan groups in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, and well, yeah, but they aren't groups that have survived, as far as I understand it.
Yeah.
It's more like people who have started taking an interest in ancient beliefs, and they're sort of taking bits and pieces of it and sort of recreating it, and it's probably
it's neo-paganism.
Yeah.
Like my friend who sacrifices bacon. They tend to use Snorri Sturluson, a Christian writer of the 13th century, as their holy scripture.
Yeah, the Edda.
Yes.
That isn't actually the Viking Bible, although it's often thought of that way. But it was
religious poetry surviving, but there's no religious cult surviving, so nobody knows how to perform Viking period cults correctly.
Right.
All right, we've got 2 minutes left now. So what we usually do is we allow our guests to have a
Self-regulation.
Yeah, yeah. You can get up on your soapbox now. If there's anything you want to promote, go ahead.
I was pleased to hear the last with the lady from ERV.
Yeah.
She's on science blogs, and so am I. So if you want to read about archaeology, you can follow my blog at scienceblogs.com/aardvarchaeology.
All right.
You'll find it. And also, if you're in any way capable of reading Scandinavian languages, go to vof.se. That's the Swedish Skeptics website, where we've got an enormous archive of stuff from our quarterly journal. It's been appearing since the 80s, so we've got a lot of stuff there covered.
And I just take it you cover absolutely any subject. Any and every subject you can.
Well, yeah, anything that can be approached scientifically. So you won't find articles about whether Jesus loves all the children or not.
Right. Okay, thank you very much, Martin. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been great.
Okay, just very quick, a very reduced panel this week, so just go around for your final thoughts. Kit, you've been very quiet again.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know really too much about Sweden, but it was very interesting to hear about skepticism in Sweden and the problems you guys have, and probably the advantages you guys have as well in terms of religion. I would definitely be a country. You've definitely convinced me that if I ever have to move anywhere, it'd be Sweden.
Yeah,
and
it's a good
and it was
place,
great.
but it's way during the winters. It's dark and nasty and cold.
I'm used to cold, but thanks for coming on. It's been brilliant.
okay.
Thank you.
Marty.
Yeah, I know quite a bit about Sweden, but I don't know much about archaeology, so it has been interesting. Unfortunately, if I knew a little bit more than I do, I could have had more interesting questions, I guess.
Yeah, but it's been good for you to have a fellow countryman on.
Yeah.
Don't be too hard on yourself. Are you a member of EOF?
No, I'm not. I actually didn't really know much about it.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, why don't you add me on Facebook and Twitter?
I don't have Twitter, but I'll add you on Facebook.
Thanks, man.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Just to let you all know, there's no show next week as I'm due in for some surgery, just something minor, but we'll be back in 2 weeks, and it's going to be the live ponage will be making a return. And I think, Marty, have you seen the target for the live ponage? Have you seen anything of it?
I'm not sure.
It's the Privileged Planet.
No, I have not seen
And
it.
it's made
Was
by...
that the site you showed me about? Was it birds can fly, therefore God did it, or something like that?
Yeah, that's one of the documentaries they have.
Oh,
It's
crap.
basically it's the Discovery Institute. They make
Just look at the banana.
basically it's the makers of that Lee Strobel
Yeah.
we watched.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes. So everyone gather round, and also we were scheduled next week to have Karen Stolzenov on the show, but we will be rearranging that due to me having to go to hospital. So anyway, everyone, thank you very much for tuning in, and hope you all have a great rest of the weekend wherever you are, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Nighty nighty.
Right out.
There are these sort of ghost hunter shows, seeing I guess the rest of the Western world. We have shows like that being made in Sweden as well, by some fairly influential people in the media that used to do like talk shows and stuff like that.
Kitch, do you
But
have
it's not the sort of thing that where the entire population will sit down to watch the Ghost Hunter
No.
show, because they're sort of on more marginal TV channels, and
Right.
it's considered loopy, I believe. It's not a mainstream belief that you can contact your dead grandma.
No, I'm getting the same impression that there are very few people who take it seriously, but it's still something that gets heard and clearly is considered worth giving airtime to.
Well, I guess it brings in the advertisers.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like in your own field of archaeology, what's the kind of common sort of claims that you've had to deal with and debunk?
Well, we've got a few fringe theorists in Swedish archaeology. They tend to like astronomy, where you look at how archaeological sites relate to celestial events. And I mean, that is, on the one hand, a real field of study, where people are doing real archaeological work. But then we've got amateurs doing weirder stuff, and we've got this one guy who he's been doing it for like 15, 20 years about this one site, where he pretty much, it's sort of looks a bit like Stonehenge, and he's sort of camped out there, and he will very aggressively push his views on anybody who shows up there. It's a bit like having somebody in an anorak standing next to Stonehenge 24/7 and yelling at people.
And like, have you ever gone head to head with some of these people? Like just debated them or argued them, like some of the fringe archaeologists, or just anyone on the other side of the skeptics debate? Have you gone head to head with anyone?
I haven't done it live, but I've been engaged in quite a lot of sniping on the internet and in the media.
Yeah.
But the one time that this guy, the one I mentioned, he wanted to debate me, and I said, sure, if you can get the media on it, because it's not worth my time to go across the country to sit in a village hall in front of 20 believers. But as usual, the media and fringe views. So he makes the local paper, but rarely anything bigger than that.
Okay, Kitch, do you have any questions there?
Yes, there's a question from the chat actually. Just trying to get for some reason Skype has just decided to hide the chat on me. There we go.
It's NSA.
This one is from Shangori.
Yeah, Shangori.
Everyone is part of the church in Sweden pretty much by default, which is what he heard. Doesn't the government still give money to the churches based on the amount of people who are part of the church? So even though there aren't people in the church, the money still goes there.
Well, In the year 2000, the Swedish state church was divorced from the Swedish state, so it's now just another religious organization, and this means that they are dropping in membership pretty fast. But also, the Swedish former state church has been identified as a main reason for Sweden being a secular country. There's a sociologist of religion, or sociologist of atheism, really, whose name is Phil Zuckerman, and he studied Danish atheism a few years back and put out a really good book called Society Without God. And he said that the sort of very rational and non-emotional nature of the Swedish state church has led to people sort of staying in that organization but losing all religion. But it's true that they still get some of these, and for me as an archaeologist, I'm kind of happy that they do, because they pay for a lot of the upkeep of Swedish medieval buildings.
Okay, Kitchi, any other questions?
Not at the moment. My brain is fried.
Well, we do have a troll. I think it's a troll anyway, saying, "Can you guys prove you were here 3 billion years ago?" Well, actually, I don't think any one of us claims to have been alive for 3 billion years. Dumbass.
That sounds very New Age. Usually the estimates for when Atlantis was going is slightly later than that.
I was going to say, how do you find, like...
I feel 3 billion years old.
Let's say one thing we've kind of commented on the show before is like how just...
Thrilled to find that there are people who actually like science and who will say that, well, that issue is there's no use speculating about that because there's no data, which is awesome if you're from a humanities background.
All right. So how did you get involved in the association itself, and how did you progress up to being the chairman?
Well, a friend of mine sort of mentioned them, and I started, I joined, and I got the quarterly journal, and after a few years I started editing the quarterly journal, and another few years I got elected onto the board, and for the past 3 years I've been the chairperson. Right. So it's a lively association.
All right. What's kind of the day-to-day workings of the association?
Well, what we mainly do is organize lecture nights and skeptics in the pub, and we put out, as I said, the quarterly journal. But I guess what is the most visible day-to-day thing we do is that we write debate pieces for the papers, and we give out annual awards, which always entertains journalists, because we have an anti-award where we tell people that they are full of shit.
And so, like, what's kind of is there any sort of like woo or, pseudoscience that seems to be taking hold in Sweden? How is just the general population in Sweden, their attitude towards science?
Well, the thing to remember about Scandinavia is that we are extremely secular. Just the general society has sort of left religion behind, and people will get really uncomfortable if you make strong religious expressions either for or against a religious view. And they don't like loud religious people, and they don't like loud atheists either. But that, of course, means that creationism is a non-issue, pretty much, in Sweden. And we don't get religious people trying to dictate how sex education should be done or anything like that. I guess our single biggest issue is alternative medicine, where there's quite a lot of that.
Okay, Marty, you might be able to fill.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add. I mean, sure, we do get creationists every now and then, but mostly they're not from around here. They're immigrants, usually Muslims. But yeah, other than that, I pretty much agree. There is quite a bit of alternative medicine and stuff like that in general, sort of new agey stuff. And
TV shows about spiritual medium.
Yeah, and... God kväll och välkomna till Trolling with Logic den 25 januari 2014. Klockan är 8 här i Sverige, 7 GMT och 2 i östra USA. Vi är en liveshow på internet som behandlar ämnen som vetenskap, skepticism och filosofi. Jag är Mortimer och med mig som vanligt är Zulu och Kitsch. Och nu lämnar jag över till Zulu för allt det tekniska.
And thank you very much for the lovely intro, Marty. And just to go over the usual kind of tech stuff, just you can call in at any time. We take calls after about 30 minutes of the show. Just send a Skype contact request to Trolling with Logic, send me a PM with a just general gist to your question, and we'll add you on in time. Also, the show is later uploaded to YouTube and iTunes, so if you call in, we are recording, so you grant us permission to use your likeness in the recording. And also, this show is public domain, and so feel free to share it, copy it, distribute it any way you like. We only ask that you link back to us as a courtesy. And just a very quick say hello to a kind of reduced panel. There's no Sheila this week, but welcoming back, Kitch. How are you doing?
Hey, everybody.
And Marty, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine.
All right, and we'll do a very quick introduction to our special guest. We were scheduled to have the Northern Ireland Humanists on, but they couldn't make it, so our guest kind of came in at the last minute here. He is the president of the Swedish Skeptics Association. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the Swedish name of it. And
Vetenskap och folkbildning.
There you go.
Hey!
And also he holds a PhD in archaeology, specializing in Scandinavian prehistory. So please welcome to the show, Martin. How do you pronounce your surname? Sorry.
That's Rundkvist in Swedish,
Rundkvist.
but you can say Rundkvist if you like.
All right, so like I say, welcome to the show.
Or you can say RuneQuest, that's even better.
So we'll just start off the usual kind of introductory questions. So, like, how did you get interested in skepticism? What really?
I was bullied by postmodernists at my department when I was a PhD student. They were very sort of arts wings, humanities people, and I was...
Skeptics are portrayed in the media. I mean, do you come across that? Because skeptics are always portrayed as being, you know, miserable, cynical kind of people.
Well, in the mainstream media, no, we get pretty good press. We've got a lot of very sort of mainstream academics on our board and sort of in our ambit. So, no, we along with the media mainly. Of course, there are fringe publications that hate us and fringe movements that hate us. And we've got this one guy who doesn't like us. He's a believer in astral travel and stuff like that. And he spends, or at least he used to spend, enormous amounts of time sort of reacting to anything we did on his websites and sort of writing about us and stuff. So it was sort of like having a press officer working 50% of full time for you for free, only he's really hostile to the organization. But still, he also put out... gave us a bit of visibility through his actions. But since we're not sort of... I mean, to be a skeptic in the US, you are in some sense yourself a beleaguered minority, sort of fighting against people with a lot of political clout. I mean... 50% of active US voters are willing to vote for the Republican Party. That would not happen in Sweden. I mean, the guy who is the Prime Minister of Sweden right now is he's on the most conservative party that is sort of politically viable in Sweden at all, and he endorsed Obama. He does not endorse the Republicans. So the most sort of hard-headedly conservative Swedish politician is not even on that half of the spectrum of U.S. politics. So our situation as skeptics in Sweden is very different. But I suppose you would recognize that from Scotland, traditionally an enlightened country.
Right. Yeah, well, we do have some problems. Like there's like one newspaper, you probably heard of it, the Daily Mail.
Oh yeah, the Daily Fail.
Yes, which is kind of hardcore anti-science paper.
Oh yeah, they're populist basically.
Yeah. Basically. I mean, do you have anything like that in Sweden, like any kind of like mainstream media?
No, wouldn't say that at all.
It's free
version,
stuff, basically.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And people who have a voice thanks to the internet, largely. I mean, the people we're